I want to talk about evolution of government spending in India over the years. We are aware that public expenditure before 1991 reforms was a major part of overall expenditure on welfare services in India. It was an outcome of a belief system post World War II that the state can and should be a major actor in providing goods and services to the people. A surprising misconception here is that India followed a socialist model of growth, whereas Western countries like USA and UK followed a capitalist and a laissez-faire approach. The reality, on the other hand, is that Indian government and economists took detailed feedback from economists even in Western nations, and the majority favored a government-led growth model. This was because the Great Depression and World War II had been overcome using J.M. Keynes' policy of government-led development. The Marshall Plan of redevelopment of Europe was also government led. Thus, it is safe to say that the dominant mood at that time was to lead from the front. However, no one knew at that time how this approach could backfire. No one took the warning signs seriously. The problem was that everybody thought that the government can be super efficient. Let's take an example to understand this. Bhakra Dam project was announced by Pandit Nehru somewhere in 1954. But even after 1 year of its announcement, no work had been done. Why was that? Just because the committee that was responsible for rehabilitation of villages that were to be affected by the dam could not decide how to rehabilitate, could not decide how much to pay, or where to find land for these villages. This kind of inefficiency was hidden from the popular eye at that time. But when the government realized that it cannot itself build an entire nation, it had to change its strategy. This change is popularly called as LPG reforms. After reforms, the trend of public expenditure in India has changed drastically. It has changed, but it did not lose its importance. You may ask why. Look around you. There is so much poverty, so much unemployment amongst the youth, so much illiteracy. Even the educated do not feel empowered due to low quality of education. And what about health? We have to take care of ourselves, even after paying taxes and having insurance policies. No one wants to go to government primary hospitals for treatment because of the quality. Let's look at some facts that can tell us how important welfare expenditure by the government can be. As per UNDP, United Nations Development Program, more than 15% of Indians are still multidimensionally poor. And if we try to find people below poverty line in absolute sense, we all know the real facts can be as high as 50%, 50. As per PLFS, Periodic Labor Force Survey, unemployment is 10% for youth in the age group of 15 to 29. If the youth can't find decent work, how will the country grow? At the end, a country's progress depends on progress of its people. As per 2011 census, which is the latest census that has been held till date, only 73% Indians are literate. I'm here talking about literacy, not education. If we try to find well educated and empowered individuals, it will easily go below 50%, 50. And according to economic survey, out of pocket expenditure on health remains around 50%. It simply means that if you earn 50,000 per month and you're spending 5,000 per month on health, then half of that goes from your pocket. Now 2,500 seems like a small amount, but yearly you're spending 30,000 from your pocket on health even after paying taxes and having an insurance policy. Now let me take you through some changing trends of public expenditure post reform in India. As a part of LPG reforms, post 1991, there was a clear shift in public expenditure towards prioritizing economic growth with very varying focus on social services like health, education, and welfare. Initially, after liberalization, government spending on social services did see a decline in relative terms because the focus shifted towards fiscal consolidation and economic liberalization. In short, the government did reduce its expenditure on social welfare. But as the new century started, there was a renewed focus on social sectors due to growing concerns over inequality and poverty. It was also visible in the themes of 10th and 11th 5 year plans, which was to promote inclusive growth. Now, this can be easily understood from having a look at government schemes. If the government had actually believed that it is going to let the private sector decide the future course of action, so many government schemes would not have been launched. But we all know the present scenario. No one even knows the exact number of schemes running presently, just because there are so many. It doesn't mean they're bad or inefficient. Some schemes like NRHM, Rural Health Mission, Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, and MG Narega were launched to improve access to basic services. And they have indeed helped a lot many Indians come out of clutches of poverty. Due to efforts of NHM, Health Mission, maternal and child indicators such as infant mortality rate and maternal mortality rate, they have indeed shown a lot of improvement. Although government spending on social welfare schemes has been increasing, the problem is that as a percentage of GDP, it still remains very low in India when we compare to developing or developed nations. As per the latest economic survey, as a percentage of GDP, expenditure on social services stands at 7.8% in 23-24 in India. In comparison, in USA, the spending is 29% of GDP on social services. Such is the gap, such is the difference. The second major transformation we need, and we are witnessing it in parts, is in technology. If we as a nation want to move ahead in development, we need a major transformation, and transformation of technology has the potential to reduce corruption and take development directly to poor households. Direct benefit transfer seems to be doing that. As per a recent government report, how much has India saved due to DBT? 27 billion US dollars. The third major transformation we have made is in public private partnership, which means no competition, more sync between the government and the private sector. It can help people lift themselves up faster. People don't have to wait for the government to help them out. One such initiative was to push private banks to lend more to MSMEs as a part of their priority sector lending targets. Over a period of 3 decades, that means 30 years, this initiative of PSL has helped many small enterprises get faster loans and thus grow through leverage. Even the economic survey said the same, that the credit growth to MSMEs is above 30%, which simply showcases the strong growth of small enterprises in India that are mainly clustered in rural and semi urban areas. Now, although these efforts are helping India grow, but inclusive growth is still a dream. If we want to develop fast, we need to work on some problems. Let's try and highlight those problems. The first one is corruption. The problem with corruption is it's not only an economic drain on a country, it's also a psychological drain on a country. Corruption takes away the desire to work for anyone other than yourself. It makes one a coward. It also breeds low quality work. Corruption breaks down the ethical beliefs of a society. The second major problem is regional disparities. We are witnessing in India too much growth in urban areas, and too little growth in rural areas. It is problematic for both the urban part of the country as well as the rural part of the country. The third major problem is underfunding for projects that are important for actual poor, whereas spending too much welfare money on projects that even the private sector can take care of. And lastly, and most importantly, education. How many of us are actually and truly aware about our surroundings? How many of us can look past the propaganda and fake news and can see the real news? How many of us read for our own intellectual development and not to clear exams? When the answers to these questions start changing, you would know that the nation is developing inclusively. This is all from my side for this small discussion on evolution of Indian government's expenditure over the past 7 decades. If you want to say anything, if you have anything to pen down, feel free to write it down in the comment section below, and I will try and answer your questions and your discussions as soon as possible. All the best.